she came into my life at the right time, but it would have been nice to have her sooner, is a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Get some coaching. You don't have to know everything. I will tell you that. I would tell my younger self that. I spent a lot of time
trying to figure it out.
But also of the belief that I should know everything. And if I don't, there's something wrong with me. Okay, little bit, that belief in here that that whole I'm not enough, et cetera, right? That thing. I spent a lot of time thinking, oh, if I don't know that, I'm defective, something's wrong. And being, trying to cover that up, or just feeling really bad because I didn't know, and sometimes not asking for help when I should have. And so I wish, I would tell my younger self that now. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It doesn't mean you're defective or stupid. It means you're smart.
Right.
It's good to know that you don't know.
Hello, and welcome everyone to another episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. On today's episode, we have the amazing Terri Paige, and she's going to share her stories, her insights, her journey with us. Terri, I'd like for you to introduce yourself, tell our audience a little bit about you and how you got into entrepreneurship.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
My name is Terri Paige, and I am actually in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been in Kentucky really all of my adult life. And I have been an entrepreneur for, I guess, 32, almost 33 years. So it's been a long time. Some of the businesses that I am in, I've been in with my husband, and some of them have been my own adventures. And I think, I probably should go a little bit backwards and tell you a little bit about me. My husband and I have been together a very long time. We actually grew up together in Western Kentucky. I tell people that we have been going steady for, 47, 48 years. We've been married for almost 43 years. And we have 8 children together. So 8 children, 3 grandchildren. It's been a wild ride, the ups, downs, ins, outs, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all the things in between. But we're still here. We're still standing. So that's exciting. And I started my education. Originally, I'm a degreed accountant. So I have an accounting degree, and I worked in the corporate accounting world for several years. And that was a strategy. We started out in life, my husband and I, like I mentioned earlier, very young together. We actually experienced a teen pregnancy together, and we got married a few years after that. So we've been together, like I said, a very long time and been through a lot. My husband had always wanted to go to medical school, and that we didn't want to change. And I was on a college track when we found ourselves diverted a little bit. So I chose to do something I was good at, but didn't necessarily love. Apparently I have some weird knack with numbers. I can look at something and say, oh yeah, that's not right. And, go back and figure that one out and that kind of thing. So I'm good at numbers for whatever reason. So that was what I chose, was to become an accountant. And this was in the early 80s that it was. So there was a lot of good work available in corporate accounting. And so that's what I did while he went to medical school and did residency. I worked as an accountant. But we had always intended, I grew up in a medical family. My dad came from the Philippines. He worked in the old TB hospital system for a while when he was in the United States. Of course, that doesn't exist anymore, but there were TB for tuberculosis sanitariums for people to go and convalesce and hopefully get better. And he worked in that system and ultimately became somewhat of a lung specialist. And then he went off on his own in I think 1970. He went out on his own and hung that little shingle in the small town and became the town doctor. And that's what I grew up with. I remember going in and, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's cleaning the office in the middle of the night or doing the books or doing any of that. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My mom was a nurse, and she often worked in the office when she wasn't taking care of us. So that just seemed very natural to me. Own your own business, do your own thing. And my dad had a really strong work ethic of, you just, whatever it takes, you figure it out. and you make it happen. And I appreciate that. He did pass that on to me. As a matter of fact, actually, today is his birthday. He would have been 94 if he was still
Oh,
living. So it's fun that I'm doing this today on his birthday. But so I had that in my blood. Now, I did obviously go work in the corporate world for several years, which was fine. I loved that. I loved the structure. I loved the training. I loved the learning that happened in that environment and the experience and the different, for 4 years, I worked in the banking industry as the financial director for the retail accounting division, which was huge for me or for the retail banking system. It allowed me access to all the different areas of the bank and different customers and interaction. So I got to learn a lot about different industries and how to run businesses vicariously without the risk by working
right.
in corporate accounting. But my husband and I knew that someday when he finished his training, we wanted to do that, to go out into kind of a small town. We didn't really want to go back to where we grew up because it was too small for us. So we wanted we had very specific parameters. You put things out there and you don't know how it's going to work out. And if I'm going to give little tips, I'm going to tell you that one right now. Don't be afraid to write a dream down, put it out there on a piece of paper, in the universe, whatever you want to call that, and have no idea how you're going to get there, because then you'll start to see the choices and the little actions that you can take to get to that goal, that North Star that you're going for. But we put it out there that we were going to move to a small town near a big city with lots of good food options and blah, 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 all the parameters that we wanted, but we wanted to still have more of a rural life too, to raise our kids in. And actually, it happened, which was great. And it kind of happened through some connections that I had working in the banking industry. But we moved to a little bedroom community outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And we did just that. We literally hung the shingle, painted the walls. This was it was 1992. So we put borders up along the walls, the old
Oh,
wallpaper borders, got all the artwork. And we just started from zero, and at
yeah.
first, right, no patience. But I learned a lot in my years of working in the corporate world. So I knew about marketing. I knew about a lot of different things. So we really we gave it a go and we grew very quickly. There was a demand in that community. There was a need, and we were out there pounding the pavement. So there's another little tip as we're going along here. Don't be afraid to put the sweat equity in. You're going to have to do work that you're not going to see a payoff from until later on. So you're the grunt work. You're the boots on the ground in the beginning, especially when you're bootstrapping your new business. And you go out there and you create the connections, get out into the community, network, even though again, you're not going to see a payoff right now, like, oh, I
Mhm.
just talked to that person and now all of a sudden they've spent $1 million in my business. You won't see that, but later on it'll come back around to you. So that's another little thing that I'm grateful that we did, even though maybe at the time we didn't understand what a good thing that was. Um, but we did. We grew that little practice. We ultimately built a building. We added partners. Made good choices along the way, but made mistakes too. For example, you want to structure your business, your corporate structure, well, whenever you take on partners. That
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
have done that, but again, it worked out. It worked out fine. It worked out all okay. You get those rough little lessons along the way, and they're never failures, right? You just kind of
Mhm.
fail forward. you
Yeah.
fail forward, and you go, "Ooh, yeah, that wasn't a good choice. What can I do differently next time?" Um, but ultimately, so we kept growing that primary care practice. It was internal medicine and pediatrics over the years, and then for a while, I stepped out of our business for a while because we had more kids. So earlier I told you we had 8 kids. So we had one obviously when we were super young. We had another one when my husband was in medical school, and then we had a large gap while we grew business and kind of became adults, I'll say. And then I guess I was 35 or so when I realized, gosh, wait a minute, we've had a lot of fun. We've done a lot of things, but I forgot that I actually really wanted a big family. I wanted, and when I was growing up, but things happened along the way that
Yeah.
diverted us in a different direction. So we just became very open to however many God wanted to send us, and He sent us 6 and 7 years. So
That's
we kind
awesome.
of laughed because most people would have maybe been spread out over a bigger period of time, but He had to hurry up because I was getting old. So I had my last one. I was almost 43 when we had our last one, and so our kids are 44 to 18. That's how old they are. That's the spread. But 6 of those were in 7 years. So needless to say, I was not working outside the home during that time for several years. But it's funny because just in terms of entrepreneurship, when I was a child, I used to like go peddle door to door, like candy bars or greeting cards, things like that, because I saw the promise of payoff of your own hard work, right?
Mhm.
And and then of course we had that opportunity to do it in the medical practice as we started into that phase of our lives. And while I was at home with our kids, there were many years that I was obviously consumed with. I had some health issues during that time that kind of compounded up until about 2008. And we were busy changing diapers and
Right.
feeding people and doing all those things. But it was funny. We had an aha moment, my husband and I did, in terms of how to approach health as I kind of hit a low point in my health journey. And that was really just a little synopsis. It was autoimmune issues, GI issues, and metabolism issues. So all the things that kind of can take you down with diagnoses like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, chronic infections, things like that. So that was kind of where I was at the low point in 2008. And through research and study, my husband had really wanted us to look at a different way of approaching my health. And so I became that guinea pig, which was great because I was desperate. And that's
Right.
ultimately actually what led to the business we have today, which is kind of a cool offshoot. We can go back to that in a second. But as I started to feel better, 2009, 2010, during those years, I got that itch again for something to do, something to create. It wasn't enough that I was homeschooling kids and creating things at home, but, I needed something else, right?
Why not? Why not add some more to the plate?
So I always wanted to, I always wanted to do something creative, but for various reasons, right? I had gone down a very mathematical path in my education before, but I had this latent creative side on the side of me, textures, fibers, fabrics, different things like that. And one daughter in particular is very much into that too. So I learned to knit, I think maybe like 2009. And all of a sudden it became an obsession. Like I'd always wanted to do something that was, like that. So I don't know if you've ever gotten into yarns and fibers and things like that, but those can be addictive, right? So you go in there,
Mhm.
they're so beautiful and you can bejewel them and you can do all things. So I started making things like crazy, more than my family really wanted to own. So many little things, hats and scarves and felted purses and all kinds of things I was making. And, like in the middle of the night while the kids were sleeping because it was so much fun. And then I thought, okay, well, I got to do something with this. So I started a little business called Crazy Eight. Get it? Crazy Eight Knits. Crazy Eight Knits. And my daughter started Lily's Arts, and we went on the road. We took our show on the road. So we did craft shows and fairs and fall festivals and things like that. And that was so much fun. It's just, again, because it's the work of your hands. It's the
Right.
direct interaction, just that, again, that little entrepreneurial endeavor.
Right.
And several of my kids have caught that bug. But so I had that one kind of in between building the medical practice. And then because we were so much into focusing more on helping the body heal itself, and which
Mhm.
is the essence of our business now, cellular medicine, and giving the body what it needs to heal itself. And it can be a traditional medicine. It
Mhm.
could be, we haven't thrown that away, but it can also be a number of other tools, peptides or stem cells or exosomes. Nutrition is always the backbone of that, and targeted supplementation. So I actually found a company that provided products that I loved and wanted to incorporate, which was a network network marketing company. And I thought, oh, this is fun. I'll do this. Okay, you asked me about entrepreneurial journey.
I know. I know.
To be fair, I've heard that term serial entrepreneur. Maybe
Yes.
on some small scale, that's what I am. It is. It's like because it's fun. I mean, you're creating. It's the growth. It's the impact of what you really have to stretch yourself too.
Right.
And through that company, that was it's been a wonderful time. And I did grow a pretty large business to the top, part of that company. Some things shifted in our current business that made me have to pivot and focus more on that. So while I do still have that business, I don't have it. I'm not working that to the extent that I used to. But what was so powerful and impactful to me during that time, especially, was the personal growth focus.
Right.
And companies such as this are so, good ones, right, are very focused on personal development and personal growth. And while I had been, I'd read books and done things over the years in my career, there was such an exposure there to that whole world of, the different authors and the podcast, or they weren't even podcast, the SoundClouds back then, and all of that. It was just like, oh my goodness, I didn't know this world existed.
Exactly.
And that was so important for mindset and to steel me for some of the things that were to come, because no journey is smooth, right? No journey is smooth. But that was that. So that, personal development, I wish, I would have really delved into that maybe in my 20s. My 20s. I mean, I'm getting ready to be 61. And so I wish I would have I didn't really delve into that. I will tell you, into my, I guess, I don't know, like late 40s, 45.
And that's for most people. That's for most people. They don't really know about that until they hit a wall. And then in searching for something to fix that, whether it be something traumatic or just a wall in business growth, they're looking for that thing. And then they realize, wait, there's another side of business, which is the mindset.
Yeah, the mindset game. And, I think through just grit, and I will tell you that a lot of that came from my dad. It was, he could be tough. It was like, no excuses. It's 100. Why wasn't it 110 if there were bonus points? And that some of that maybe I needed to work through in therapy, but overall, I think those are good characteristics to hone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Personal responsibility, taking responsibility for things, and not just trying to push blame and things like that. That's, to the detriment. Sometimes it can be, oh, everything was my fault. You got to get that complex too going on. But, that's where that whole world of personal development was very helpful to me, in addition to another choice that I made, I guess back in 2011 or so. And it was tied to my husband and I looking to transform the medical practice that we had. So I guess 2008, right? Recession, 2009, the things that happened during those years, healthcare reform, that really shifted the world of private practice of medicine. Okay. And so I had been out of it for several years. I was out of our practice from, I guess, 1998, right before I had our third child, until the end of 2010. I had not been working outside the home, except for my knitting business.
Right.
and which was by design, but things were shifting in the ecosystem of the world of private practice medicine. And especially now, if you look at it today, how many private practice internal medicine physicians do you see, or pediatricians, or family medicine, or, most people are either more commonly part of a large healthcare system, right?
Right.
Or they're part of a really large, maybe multi-specialty group.
Right.
Gone are those mom and pops, or those small little, clinics on the side, in town. And that happened in 2008, 2009 as a fallout. Okay.
Oh.
Yes, that was a whole change in our industry. What happened was, and some of it was good, trying to standardize and clean up, but it, in my opinion, and in our experience, it created a very large bureaucracy, more
Mm-hmm.
bureaucracy. I mean, I used to be able to, just for example, do insurance billing in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night for a couple of hours for our private practice myself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now it takes a whole team of experts who are trained in the nuances of each little subcode and da 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 da, and how to play that game. And there's such a that's a whole industry now, right?
Right.
How to
Right.
code for. I mean, when was the last time you got an explanation of benefits and you look at it, or a medical bill, and it's like, what does this all mean? It
Exactly.
used to not be like that in the beginning, right? It was more simple. Healthcare was between you and your physician, and insurance was there if you had a big expense.
Right.
Right? Well, of course, as we know it today, that's all changed, but we
Mm.
lived through that change. And it
Wow.
was very tough. It was very tough. What happened was I'm going to say the documentation requirements
Mm-hmm.
increased vastly, meaning red tape.
Right.
Now, if you want a medication, you have to go through 3 levels of approval for from somebody else over here in the background that's not your physician. That's red tape,
Oh.
right? That's red
Mm-hmm.
tape. So that red tape started in earnest around 2008, 2009, 2010, and then which required more overhead just from a business perspective, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
people then, I mean, we had one person in the front and a nurse in the back, and we ran a clinic with 40, 50 patients a day because
Mm-hmm.
that's what you needed. Then all of a sudden that staffing had to grow in order to take care of the paperwork and to get the approvals, et cetera, et cetera. So the business was changing from just a
Right.
business standpoint. And, of course, that was adding overhead. And at the same time, because, there was, I'm going to put quotes around it, healthcare reform happening,
Mm-hmm.
reimbursements were going down. So, just from a pure business standpoint, if you think about this, payments are going down and expenses are going up.
I am so glad that you've even shed light on it. Because from a patient's perspective, I always wondered, a lot of the doctors that I had in 2008, they were no longer there. They had totally switched practices and totally moved out of like one thing to do plastic surgery,
Mhm.
breast augmentation, stuff like that. And I'm like, but you were my OB, or you were, like everything changed.
Right. Well, it was really it was very challenging because our goal. I mean, my husband was internal medicine and pediatrics. Basically, he wanted to take care of the whole family,
Hmm.
birth to death, get to see everybody. Really spend time with people, and that was the model we had up until that point. It was not broken. It
Right.
wasn't broken until then there was the requirements again. You have to put this little code here to make sure that you documented that it was this piece of your pinky that was hurt. Yeah, it was to standardize so that you could get discrete data in the
Hmm.
computer system for reporting. And just from a business side, right? That was
Right.
really what was being looked for, was more discrete data to manage things.
Hmm.
Um, so in addition to that, what then became to that end were electronic health records. That was the next
Hmm.
requirement, was, okay, now everybody needs to go on a computerized system, whether you want to or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, of course, we had a computerized billing system, and we'd had that for years. But electronic health records then all had to be put into there, which was the purpose of all that coding, that needs to
Right.
be done so that you can create discrete data so you can mine that data.
Hmm.
Don't think that your healthcare information is private. It's not.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's not. But that was the purpose of it, right? And so
Hmm.
at first there were some incentives to invest, $250,000 in that type of technology, because at that point it was all server based, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Um, there were some incentives to do that, but then if you didn't, there were also sticks. So there were carrots to do it, but then sticks if you didn't get it done in a certain amount of time.
Mm.
So that's what was going on the backside of the industry. Just FYI, that was happening, 2000, that was like 2009, 10, as we were heading into that. And so, my husband, I had been out of the business for many years, but we were trying to decide as a family, what's the right thing to do? Should he just go work for one of the systems, or should we forge ahead and adapt? So I had been staying home with the children and I had just started feeling better after kind of hitting that lowest point in my health in 2008. So this was like at the end of 2010. And we were trying to discern, okay, what's the right thing for our family and for our business to happen next? And we made a decision that I would go back into the practice for a year and shift it and grow it in the sense that we would start now to focus more on wellness and prevention and education, still doing our primary care that was being done in the office, but expand that so that we could share some of the principles that we had learned to improve our own health.
Nice.
As we were going to expand the facility, we were going to add some other physicians. I was going to help grow this. And then also I had to implement the electronic medical records that we talked about. That was a project looming that needed to be done while we were still in a grace period. So we decided, okay, Mom will go in and work for a year. Famous last words, right? What is this, 24?
I was going to say, you've been in there for way more. Okay.
I was going to go in and work for a year and do that and then come home. And we sat the kids down and we told them, okay, this is what we're going to do. And fortunately, our older son he was on board to help with some of the homeschooling. And we had a plan. We had all the things, right? We had a plan.
Wow.
But it was very complicated. The rules kept shifting and changing, back to the requirements that were being handed down to us. And we did accomplish those things. We did expand our footprint. We added those services in. My husband and I both went and got additional training. We went through an organization that was focused on anti-aging, regenerative, and functional medicine because, we do a lot of bioidentical hormone replacement example. We wanted to really, again, add these tools that could expand the care for our patients so that they would really thrive and be well. And we really thought we would do that in the insurance-based model. We really did. We thought this insurance companies are going to love this from us.
Oh, yeah, right.
On keeping people healthy. Exactly. We shopped some ideas to some local ones that were national and like, oh no, we don't want to participate in a wellness project. Why would we do that? Anyway, crazy thought. So obviously it was harder than we thought to do this, especially in the insurance-based model. Okay. Because it takes more time, right? It takes more time to sit and talk with someone about how to manage prediabetes so that it doesn't turn into diabetes rather than just here's a pill, right? For that. And in case you haven't noticed, you go see a primary care doc, right? It's a 5 to 7 minute visit, right?
Yep.
And it's for a reason. You have to do that in that business model because if you don't, you can't pay your bills. Right. So it's one problem, one solution, make another appointment if you want to talk about something else. And, God bless all the folks that are still out there doing that because it's tough. It's really tough. But that's not the game we wanted to play. We really wanted to focus on helping people really thrive and be well. So we did ultimately in that practice, we built out the facility, we added the physicians, we added a wellness program, we put in a dispensary, not only for maybe first line meds if you needed them, but for also very curated and targeted supplementation based on, you're deficient in vitamin D. Here's a really good one. I know your body's going to absorb and not just pee out, So those were the things we were doing. Educational classes. I'd gotten a coaching certification as a lifestyle coach. We really felt like it was going to work.
Off.
Take off. It was tough and left and right around us, our colleagues were selling and folding into the bigger systems around us. And people used to come and visit us and go, wow, this is so amazing what you all are doing. You're all rock stars. And it was killing us. It truly was killing us. Talk about margins razor thin and managing cash flow. And when you're in that model, you're very dependent on third party billing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a regular work, you do something, you get paid for it, right? In that
Hopefully,
model,
yes, sorry.
yeah, hopefully. I mean, hopefully. But there's not somebody in between you, right?
Right, right, right.
It's the person you did the work for, right? Which makes sense. But of course, in that model, it's third party billing. So you do the work, maybe not, a patient pays a copay. You send it off to the billing system in the sky, and you hope that you don't have to fight for that 20 cents on the dollar,
Mhm.
too long. Otherwise, it's cost you more than it did to actually provide the service, right?
Right.
Just to collect the funds. So there was a lot of, and at that time, there was more reform happening, especially in our state with the Medicaid system. And we had, a number of patients, especially after the 2008 recession and so forth, that were utilizing more of those types of insurances, that had been, even the healthcare reform insurances now were run by that system, right? Well, they had some data hiccups and some computer system hiccups. So at one point, we didn't get paid for about 4 months.
Oof.
Devastating. I mean, it was that kind of stuff. Who are we going to pay today? Are we going to pay this person, or are we going to pay us? No, we're not going to pay us. We're going to pay the employees. It was that kind of a thing. So it was a day-to-day struggle. And at one point, it got to that inflection point of thinking, okay, what we really want to do is help people thrive and be well. We don't really want to stay in the paradigm of here's a symptom, here's a diagnosis, here's a medication.
Mm-hmm.
It's sapping the life out of us to try to run this third party payer system, insurance based practice.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? So
Pivot.
now what? Yes. So what we did, because again, we had really hoped to offer that kind of care so that people could use their copays and their insurance benefits, just thrive and be well. But it was killing us. And so much so that my husband ended up with a pretty serious health issue that was based on stress.
Mm.
And now back to our earlier conversation before we recorded on trading time for money.
Yep.
Well, he was the highest producer in that practice.
Mm.
He actually got taken out for about 3 to 4 weeks. He should have been off longer. But at that point, we just said, okay, we're
Mm-hmm.
done. We have got pivot needs to happen. Now, fortunately, I was growing that network marketing business at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had created a pretty large business. So we had that piece to help us. That's that mailbox money we were talking
Yep.
about here. So we had that piece, thank goodness, to sustain us, which was a huge blessing. Build it before you need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we started Medical Transformation Center as an offshoot company from what we had, our primary care center. And because we had the infrastructure built already, we said, okay, for a day and a half a week, we are going to see people in this new model that really want to partner with us and be well and thrive and take advantage of all the tools that we have and not be beholden to, did it get approved? Right.
Right.
And then the other 3.5 days of week will be over here, while our other providers too were there always 5 days a week, taking care of, our folks who needed us in a primary care setting, because people
Right.
still need primary care and we didn't want to just abandon that.
Mm-hmm.
So we started like that and we built that, and that model, Medical Transformation Center, which is what we are today, is cash pay.
Mm-hmm.
So it is it keeps us clean in terms of being able to have latitude to do what we need to do. It can run more on a shoestring, right? Because you don't have
Mm-hmm.
all of those different layers in there that you need to cover. So, we just felt there are enough people that want what we're offering. And so this would have been really, I guess we started MTC in the winter of 2023, and we saw our first patients in January of 2014. Yeah, 2014. So we're just completing our 10th year now in
That is
MTC.
phenomenal.
And we ran it in tandem for a little while. And once that got up a little bit, then we actually did put our primary care office out on the market. And there were 3 big systems in our town at the time. And one of them was willing, the other 2 were not. One of them was willing to allow us to keep Medical Transformation Center, as we sold the primary care practice to them. And just fun fact, in case nobody knows this too. So, normally you sell a business for whatever, 3x your revenue, right? Top line revenue. That's normally, you sell a business on the open market. You sell it for a multiplier of revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you sell a medical practice, let me tell you how it works. Okay. Because again, there are Medicare rules and things like that that are involved when you're selling a medical practice to anybody, to an entity. The way you sell that, if you have any kind of like accounting sense or business sense, you'll get this, the irony of it. Okay. You sell the practice for the book value of the assets. That's what you're allowed to sell your practice for. I know, right? You got it. Book value,
Wow.
fully depreciated, or whatever the book value of those assets are on your books. So if you bought an exam table 10 years ago, that exam table is worth nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
you get to sell it. You sell it to the entity, right?
Mm.
Book value. So you sell it for book value of your assets. You get to keep your accounts receivable. You get to keep those, which is generous, right? You worked for it. You get to keep your accounts receivable. And then you get the physician who's selling the practice, the only way to get any compensation essentially is you have to go work for that entity. So you become an indentured servant. I mean, as you
Wow.
remember my history, I think that's what indentured servitude is.
Yeah. No. Yep. You're right.
So you become an indentured servant. So the physician that owns the medical practice then has to go work for that entity. And in return, the entity will pay that physician a salary, usually more than what they would pay somebody off the street. And so ideally, that then it becomes the amortization of the goodwill or the true value of what you have built over 25 years is that salary.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah. I mean, it was shocking, and we knew it, which is why we had tried not to have to do that, right? That
Right.
was why we were trying to build something up within the parameters of the insurance-based world so that we
Mm-hmm.
continue down that road. But ultimately, really, truly, what happened was we were exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And we had hit a financial spot of, we have used our resource. I mean, keep in mind too, we have 8 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're running that ship of 8 kids and all the things that go with that. Plus we had invested in the new technology that was needed in the primary care side with all of the electronic medical records. And again, I told you that was not
Right.
a cloud-based, easy breezy, a laptop and you go. No, it wasn't, because not only did you invest resources into it, but you also lost productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you've invested resources, so you've expended cash, and you have lost productivity because, I mean, and you know this well. I mean, you probably have noticed it. It slows the office visit down.
Mm-hmm.
So when it slows the office visit down, and you are drop down, click, you just lost revenue because
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't see as many patients during the day
Mm-hmm.
because it took so much longer just to do the paperwork. So
Mm.
again, a perfect storm to run these small private practices out of business.
Yep.
That's what happened to your private practice, or that's why somebody took on breast augmentation because, it's not insurance based. You could get some cash and keep the other thing running.
Yep.
You had to find other ways to create revenue streams because that wasn't going to cut it anymore, just from a pure business model.
Oh,
Okay.
now
So
it makes all the sense in the world. I hope everyone is listening and gets a grasp of what happened. I mean, assumption, you know.
yeah, I mean, we would have stayed in primary care and just added more ways to help people be well forever. We would have done
Right.
that forever. And we caught a lot of flack for, oh, you're going to go cash pay now. Who do you think you are? But I'm just telling you, in
Mm-hmm.
order to be an integrity for how we wanted to really help people, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just manage demise, which is
Mm-hmm.
really, where that was. Oh, your labs are controlled on your meds. Here's another prescription. We'll see you again in 6 months. Keep taking your medication, as opposed to how can we get your body to heal itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order for us to stay in integrity on how we wanted to really impact health on a bigger scale, and also to like feed our kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, a balance, right? A balance. And pay our employees, right? I mean, those people your employees are depending on you for their livelihood. And that's a huge responsibility.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah, right? And so, we made the best decision we could at the time. So we sold to the entity that would allow us to keep MTC going, our current business, because we knew ultimately, I mean, really, we would have loved to have just said, here, please take care of all of our primary care patients. We're going to go over here and do this. But we couldn't because there was no real payout for that, right?
Right.
We still had
Right.
bills to pay instead of trying to grow a new entity carte blanche. So we chose the entity that would allow us to continue to do that with the plan that over the next 4 years, that was how long the arrangement was going to be, that we could basically, they were going to rent my husband to me in Medical Transformation Center 1.5 days a week. And then he would work the other primary care practice where he was employed the other days. And then, over the course of 4 years, we would incrementally ratchet that up as we tried to grow that other practice. And then we would have the exit strategy. So that was the plan. And we thought, oh my gosh, thank the Lord. We are sitting pretty. We are going to be great because it was a generous salary. First time ever we had corporate.
I was going to say, a lot of people don't know that. Like, entrepreneurs don't make anything. I mean, even if the company has revenue, what
you're
you pay
investing.
yourself.
Right. You're always reinvesting in your business, right? Always reinvesting, trying to stay ahead of the curve. So we were like, oh, wow, a salary, paid vacation? Holy smokes, what is this? Paid vacation, healthcare benefits. I mean, seriously, like dental, vision, all that stuff. Because, again, as a small business, you usually don't have all of that, right? So we were super thrilled that we had this blessing. It was a good salary. It was a fair compensation. It was supposed to last 4 years. So this was at the fourth quarter of 2015. And so that agreement would have ended in the fourth quarter of 2019. You get that foreboding, right? I'm saying would have.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So awesome. So what my intention then is, okay, you don't really need me very much right now while you're working over there 3.5 days a week. I'll continue to do the part-time. We were in timeshare with Medical Transformation Center. It's very low overhead, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to shift again and grow my network marketing business because I love it. It's what I love about those products, that business, et cetera, is that it fed that part of it's a health company, a health focused company. And so it allowed me to do that and to mentor and to coach and to impact health. If they were never even going to walk in the doors of Medical Transformation Center, the people that are in that business of mine, their health has changed because of what the products are and the model. So it was thrilling. I'm like, okay, good. I'm going to go focus on this now. You do that. We'll meet back together in 4 years, essentially, sort of, right? We'll grow this other thing. We'll start ramping it up. So that lasted about a year and a half, 18 months. And in 2017, in April of 2017, my husband, I was actually at a conference at my company. Great time. And he calls me and he goes, I just got fired. I have 90 days. And I'm like, really? You just got fired? Do tell.
Right.
I mean, I'm across the country, right? He calls me and tells me this. He said, well, and we knew this particular entity in this market was having financial difficulty. And they were doing the last in, first out. So we were one of the last practices that they purchased. And they were going to have to close it. They were going to absorb all the other employees, but they were going to let the doctors go. Now, can you imagine, first of all, letting a primary care doctor go in this day and age? But he was expensive. He was expensive because of what we had built for 25 years. I mean, there were 10,000 patients in our practice. That is a boatload of influx into that system, right?
Wow.
10,000 patients. It was a huge practice. Biggest one in the biggest primary care practice in the city. We were huge.
Wow.
And, I mean, they had to make a business decision. And they said, we're so sorry, but we are going to have to end this. And they had a provision in the contract to do that. So, that income that we had, the return on our investment of 25 years of building what we
Mm.
built, it was gone. It was gone, which was it was a big deal. so so we, back again to
Mm-hmm.
decisions and being brave, deciding what to do, jumping off the high dive, things like that, right?
Oh, wait, let me stop you. Right in this moment, if you had to give yourself advice back then, before even, what would your decision have been in terms of selling, or would you have stayed, kept the practice, and tried to tough it out?
You mean before we sold it?
So before you sold the practice, if you were giving yourself, looking from where you are now, knowing what happened, what advice would you have given yourself, that younger version of yourself? Would you have still gone the same path that you're on now? Or would you have made a different decision?
I would have actually made the same decision because
Wow.
it worked out. Let me tell you what happened. Okay. When we had the primary care office before we sold it to the healthcare entity, we had looked at it inside and out to try to figure out, okay, first of all, do we want to still push through this in
Mm-hmm.
terms of dealing with all of the red tape, the bureaucracy, always asking for permission to treat somebody like you needed. Do we still want to do that? It was that, I'm so glad we don't live in that world any longer, because
Mm-hmm.
if we had not sold it, we would still be living in that world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And also, we were just, it ended up working. So
So,
probably, yeah, I would have, maybe what I would have told myself is, don't eat yourself up about this. It's going to be fine, because, there was a
of,
lot of fear
of
and
course.
through
And
that.
anxiety, exactly. And
Mhm.
that's what I want to preface to anyone listening, if they have big decisions that they have to make. In the moment, you're stressed out, you're anxious, you don't know if it's the right decision. And even if it looks great at the time, things can change later on, you know. And every decision you make when you're in that moment is a decision that you're supposed to make, is what I was getting to,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
did work out.
You assess the situation as best as you can, and the way I like to say is, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
Can I
Mm-hmm.
deal with that? Okay, if I can deal with that, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do
Mm-hmm.
this then. And I always tell my husband, we've done our due diligence. We have looked at all the options here. We're going to step forward, and I come from a faith background, so
Mhm,
we're going to step forward. And if it's not, we've used our smarts, right? We've
mhm,
used the gifts and talents we have here,
mhm.
and if it's not God's will, He's going to stop me.
Exactly.
That's my philosophy. I'm going to use all the tools I've got as a human, the
Mhm,
gifts I've got,
mhm,
and then I'm just going to trust at this point that if it's not His will, He's going to find a way and He's going to stop me.
mhm,
And so, that's that. What happened was, it was we did have to pause for a minute, and we had 90 days to make plans, to make a decision. And so when I got home that weekend, well, we looked at, okay, what are our options here? Well, one of them was, we could go back and create another primary care office again and start over, like primary care, insurance based. We could do that. He didn't have a non-compete because they were closing it. We could
mhm.
pick up where we were. We didn't have any assets anymore because we'd sold them for book value, right? So which would mean we would have to reinvest in all the assets and the infrastructure again. Okay, that's a choice. Okay, that was
Mhm,
a choice. Another choice could be that he could just go work for one of the other two entities, and we could give up Medical Transformation Center, because we already knew they would not allow him to keep that. Okay,
mhm,
so he could go work for another entity and just be employed and continue to do primary care, or we could hunker down and make it happen, grow Medical Transformation Center. And we had a day and a half a week of patients, really. I mean, that was about the size of the practice, very small. So we took a road trip. Actually, we and this is another little thing too that I would highly recommend. She came into my life at the right time, but it would have been nice to have her sooner, is a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Get some coaching. You don't have to know everything. I will tell you that. I would tell my younger self that. I spent a lot of time
Trying to figure it out.
trying to figure it out, but also of the belief that I should know everything. And if I don't, there's something wrong with me.
Mm.
Okay. You know, that little bit, that belief in here that, that whole I'm not enough, et cetera, right? That thing. I spent a lot of time thinking, oh, if I don't know that, I'm defective, something's wrong. And being, trying to cover that up, or just feeling really bad because I didn't know, and sometimes not asking for help when I should have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wish, I would tell my younger self that now. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It doesn't mean you're defective or stupid. It means you're smart.
Right.
It's good to know that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. That's how we grow. That's how we expand. Hang out with those smarter people. Don't be afraid you're going to look dumb if you ask the question. Ask it. Ask that question.
Yep.
That's how we rise, right? That's how it happens. And then mentor somebody else along the way that doesn't know.
I love that. I love that.
That I wish I would have learned earlier, but I did, through my lifestyle coaching certification, I learned a lot of science in the organization to get that lifestyle, because it's a very science-based coaching certification. But there was one module that was just pure coaching technique. And the woman who taught that to me, oh gosh, 11, 12 years ago, she's become a dear friend and a coach and a mentor. And we were just together last week in Santa Fe. She lives in the Bay Area in Northern California, but we met there and we did some coaching because we have some other decisions, new frontiers to look at. But so back in 2017, when this was happening and at this inflection point for us, we actually did fly across the country, spread our little patient load in either side. We flew across the country. My husband, his car had broken down, and he found his dream station wagon. What kind of a geek likes a station wagon? He found a dream station wagon. It was in LA. So we went and bought it. It was a great price. And we drove it actually up to Sonoma County, where our dear friend and coach lives. And we stayed with her for a few days and just dumped, brainstormed, put out options, tried to discern what is the right thing to do. And we laid out several choices and ways to approach it. And then he and I just took off across the country and drove the slow boat home, Route 66, all that stuff.
Oh, I love it.
And talked, and just soul searched and talked about what is it, we still had, this is 2017. So our youngest son at the time was only 11, so 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, those were the ages of those younger set. So we had a large responsibility at home. Our older children had stayed with them and took care of them while we did this road trip. But we just decided, we're not going back. We're going to make it work. And so we hunkered down, and, that's where your sweat equity, keeping your overhead low when you're trying to build a business, being really mindful of that. Thankfully, we had timeshare, which was completely furnished, and it was just turnkey for us to go in. We only rented it for the amount of time we were there, which is a huge blessing. We were very consultative based. So really, we just had laptops. So a lot of equipment that we needed at that point. So we were very, very low overhead. So we were able to use those 3 months of grace. He still had to work at the other entity, but that's when we really got extra busy on doing those things that we know how to do to grow a business, which is pound the pavement, right?
Back to square one.
Do talks. We did talks at young YPO groups. We did talks at all the places where our ideal patients would be, and really just started to put out content. And it grew. It grew because people wanted and they valued being able to take control. So in retrospect, right, because I don't know about you, but I can always especially look backwards, right, and see so many blessings, even though it was horrible at the time, right? So many blessings. So think about this timing a little bit, okay? So if that gig would have worked for the 4 years that it was supposed to, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would have been ending that deal
No.
at Christmas in 2019.
Mm-hmm. Right before the pandemic.
Literally starting a brand new freaking business
Mm.
at the beginning of a pandemic,
Ugh.
right? Instead, what happened is that we were blessed to be able to grow and to get a reputation, because thankfully we have a very good, solid reputation as a effective, reliable primary care
Mm-hmm.
clinic. My husband had a very good reputation. I mean, people sent him patients that they couldn't figure out, etc. So they knew that if we were doing this new thing, it must not be too woo-woo or crazy, because
Awesome.
we do a lot of like nutrition and metabolics and a lot of other things that might sometimes be considered, but we were very careful too to be very data backed and science based.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be as responsible as we can, but just have more tools at our disposal to be able to help people. And that's what this allows us to do with, in the cellular medicine world. So we were able to capitalize off of that and grow. And ultimately, in the pandemic, because we were all so low overhead, everybody went home. At that point, we had a staff of 6 and we all went home. We had a system because it's consultative. It was consultative. And so we could easily transfer to Zoom. And we saw our patients via Zoom for a year. We stayed home a year, really, primarily just because our space was so small. We
Mm-hmm.
couldn't really comply with a lot of the requirements, right? It was just
Mm-hmm.
it's like 500 square feet timeshare. So we stayed home during that time and grew. Our
That's
business,
phenomenal.
grew. And I think it was because, especially, in the pandemic, people realized I need to take responsibility for my health.
Mm-hmm.
Proactive. And then, on the flip side, unfortunately, we see a lot of folks that are still struggling with post-COVID and things like that, the
Mm-hmm.
post-COVID syndrome, which is a real syndrome, and all the fallout from that. But it was a blessing to be able to contribute, to grow remotely. And
Mm-hmm.
then we had planned actually in 2020, before the pandemic, we were actually drawing plans for a real facility, so that we could add services. And so, of course, that got put off a year. But in 2021, we picked that back up and we started again. And that's one of those things that scares the heck out of you, right? Oh, do I want to commit to real estate? Again, we'd been so low overhead, which is a blessing when you're growing a business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't have an empty building sitting that we were paying for, or equipment that we were still paying for while the world was shut down, all of that. We didn't have any of that, which was a blessing. And that's why I don't have any regrets about the timing of how all this happened, because I see the God's blessings in all of this. It was protection. And then we did build, and we added providers. We moved into our new facility in 2021, and we have a physician that we've added just recently. We're getting ready to add another physician. We've added regenerative procedures that we do here. I mean, it's been a huge blessing, but it was definitely a journey.
Wow. Yes. Yes. I mean, we've gone through the whole journey with you, and it's exciting and inspiring, because it takes a lot. And what I hope a lot of our listeners learn is that, what the person you see on the other end, right? The successful entrepreneur, it wasn't just you know 30 days to $1 million, or it's a journey. It really is a journey. Entrepreneurship is a commitment.
It truly is. And when it's, it seems like to me too, what I've noticed is when it's the darkest, don't stop, because it's getting ready to be light. Just that whole thing. It's darkest
I
before
love
the dawn.
that.
It truly is. Like when you think, oh my gosh, what is happening? But again, if you have done your due diligence, if you've already assessed this, you made a plan, you put it out there, keep going,
Mhm,
persevere,
mhm,
because there's a reason you set that plan in motion. You thought
mhm,
about this, follow the process, trust your process, and keep
mhm.
going.
And I'll add to that too. Even if things happen out of your control, It's okay to take a moment to reassess,
Mhm.
you know, and create a new game plan. But the key is not to stop, you know, and that's advice I had to learn to take myself too, right? So, I stopped, for a couple years to reassess, and it's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to take a mental health break. It's
Yeah,
okay to reassess if
for sure.
entrepreneurship is really something you want. It's okay. Some people reassess, they go and work for another company, then they come back to it. But at the end of the day, if you're really called to do it, I believe the premise of it is to just continue doing it, because whatever God or spirit or whatever you believe in put in your heart to do, I believe that that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been a ride. It always is, right? Whenever
Hmm.
you take this on, and lots of lessons learned, of course, always along the way. And too, I guess another thing that I have learned that I might have told myself earlier had I realized it was, and this one's kind of tough too. Whenever something happens, even bad stuff, it's more effective to look at it and go, okay, where is my responsibility in this?
Hmm.
Even though you sometimes will, oh, I'm a victim, this happened, blah, blah, blah. There's always some level of responsibility. Not that,
Hmm.
oh, I was bad, I did that bad, but more just to look at it, to learn from,
Hmm.
okay, yes, well, one of our daughters, for example, the other day had a wreck. It was not her fault. The other person was at fault. He turned in front of her, but where was her responsibility? So we waited to let that die down a little bit, her fear after it happened. And then we talked about that. Where was your responsibility here? She was going the speed limit. Somebody made a left turn in front of her. It was a busy spot, rush hour. Maybe don't go the speed limit at that point. Slow down if you notice somebody is trying to turn. I mean,
Hmm.
there's always responsibility, right? Not,
Hmm.
again, it was her fault, but where could she have chosen differently? And I try now more than I used to when I was younger, especially to assess things like that. Even,
Right.
like a bad conversation I've had with somebody or something. Okay, what was my responsibility there? Even though maybe he was a jerk and he shouldn't have done that. Okay, well, where's my part here?
Hmm.
Just to try to
Hmm.
learn from that
Hmm.
and always
Very true.
improve.
Very, very true. Very, very true. And how has it been in this whole process? Because I know you're taking us along this journey with your kids, right? But you're doing this, growing this business. Like, how do you find balance? And what are some ways that you would recommend or maybe suggest to someone if they're in that same spot right now? Like, how do you balance it? How do you make it work through all the ups and downs, like pivoting?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You should ask me that. Actually, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on that because I will tell you this. The years that I got to stay home with them were some of the best years of my life. I mean,
Mm,
I truly, truly, I mean, it was such a blessing because I'd not had the opportunity with my older ones, right? And
mhm.
to be able to, and I mean, we had to watch it. But it wasn't a two income family, and primary care physicians aren't the top of the totem pole in salary. We made choices for that, but that period of time was such a blessing to me. I really carried around a lot of regret and resentment for leaving that,
Mm,
and you know, nothing's free. Nothing's ever free. There's always going to be a yin and a yang, right? A plus and a minus. So what I did, and I could have done this differently, and so this would be the advice then that I would give to somebody else. Sometimes for me, a coping mechanism is to put blinders on and go, this is just what I have to do. I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to think about it. Because truth be told, I really didn't want to go back to work in 2011.
mhm,
There I spent, and one year led to another, right? I mean, we were in the
mhm.
trenches there, and I would just tell 'em, I mean, ultimately, my kids fired me from homeschooling. I forgot to tell you. Fired me because, obvious reasons, and that was awful. I was, mortified. But anyway, But I chose to put my blinders on and say, it's okay. We just got to push through. We've got to do this so we can do something good for the family. I wish I would have let myself feel more through that, because I think what happened, and especially now some of the feedback I've gotten from my kids, was maybe they thought I had just shifted into this, like, and I used to be, I mean, I'm very career driven, just, oh, this is just what she wants to do. Business, business, business. We're over here. Now she forgot about us. From my perspective, it was more of a coping mechanism because my heart was there. And I wish I would have somehow figured out a better way to create that bridge. So if you're in the middle of that, I would recommend that if that's maybe your coping mechanism, let your heart feel that and figure out those ways to create that bridge a little better.
Because then it opens up lines of communication, because then now you can hear how they feel and they can hear how you feel. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's cut off. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I regret that. And interestingly enough, again, I felt like we did what we had to do in order to feed everybody and to get out of the other side, because it was hard and it was dire sometimes. One of my daughters, I've had recently the opportunity to be helpful to from a time, because I had some flexibility and a financial perspective. And, I just had that reflection with her. I said, I know that the years that we spent many years ago, it was really hard, but I will tell you, if we had stayed in the situation we were, I probably wouldn't be able to help you today. The sacrifices that we all made as a family, this is a blessing of that. And it wasn't free. I mean, we all felt that there's fallout from that on a number of relationships, and I regret that. But so that would be advice I would give, is keep that more open.
Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing. And what just came to me was and I know this podcast isn't, about scripture or about faith, but I was watching another podcast the other day, and there's a scripture. I don't remember exactly what the scripture is, but I'm sure you can Google it. But it's about, as entrepreneurs or using your talents or anything of that nature, that basically you're supposed to not just provide for your children, but for your children's children, right? And that is what you're called to do, right? So that's something that you could probably also look up and show them, if they are faith-based as well, to say, hey, listen, it's here in the word that everything that I'm doing. So it may not have been great for you then, but on the flip side of it, this is what I was doing, not knowing that this is what I was doing.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's to shoot off of that too, the way that, maybe it's just to help myself feel better. I don't know. But the other piece that I have reflected upon too is that, our family made sacrifices especially during those years. And I, sometimes I just wonder, was it, and just and it's very humbling to see this, but it's we have made such an impact on so many other people's lives through the work that we're doing, because I mean, people come to see us because they've been everywhere and they haven't gotten answers.
Right.
So, to be able to tell somebody, hey, we've seen this before. We got this. You're not nuts, or whatever, we know what to do with this, and to see that shift in their lives. And then all of a sudden they're able to play with their kids or have energy to go work again or whatever it is. I just think, well, again, nothing's free. The sacrifices that were made over here, perhaps on the larger scale, this is a blessing. And now we are out, my husband and I are out teaching other practitioners and healthcare enthusiasts and so forth on these principles of cellular medicine. I mean, basically we think about what does the cell need to be efficient, and what's missing, and how can we get it there? So again, it could be any number of different tools, but that the bottom line is we're trying to make your cell as efficient as it can be so that you are, which means you're well, that means you're well. And whether it's
That in
just
itself is huge.
optimal aging because we're getting older, or whether you're really in a disease state that needs help.
Mhm.
So I know it's impactful, and I'm excited that we're able to help train the next generation of caregivers and providers how to do this, because that's important, that ultimately this becomes the standard of care.
And I hope it does. I really hope it does, because I mean, a lot of people walking around every day have so many things going on, that they can't get treatment for, and
Mhm.
of course, our fellow entrepreneurs that are dealing with stress, and on that level, causing their bodies to fight themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, listen, I am loving every minute that we've spent talking about your journey. Um, I want to ask you at this moment, right? You've done a million tips along the way, right? If you could, for an entrepreneur starting their business in the middle of their journey or thinking about how they can somehow pivot, what are some tips that you would give in terms of when you're evaluating your business and evaluating where you are in that journey? What are some things or advice that you would give them to, like, these are some of the things you should look at,
okay.
since Mhm.
Well, kind of circling back to something that I said earlier, I think what's really important at the beginning, before you start getting into the weeds of what you're looking at, is to think forward.
Okay.
Think forward, pick a time, 3 years, a year, 5 years. Think forward on what that looks like, ideally
Mhm.
for you. What does it look like? And be as specific as you can be. You know, I'm going to be living in this area of the country. I'm going to be going out doing lectures. I'm going to be able to travel. Whatever that looks like, write it down,
Mhm.
or however it works better for you. Draw it on a map. I don't know, just however, but really use all your senses. Speak it, hear it out loud, write it down, do something where you actually make it crystallize. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that it becomes more tangible. Put it really out there and be as specific as you can. And then go, okay, well, is what I am doing today going to take me right there? And then start to work backwards on those steps, reverse engineer that, because that will guide, when you get, out there. Sometimes we get stuck in the weeds too, right? We get
Mhm.
stuck in the minutia of this, and this. What did Stephen Covey say? Work on the business instead of in the business, and
Mhm.
quadrant,
Mhm.
right? Your four quadrants. So by the way, my coach was mentored by him.
Oh,
She's
that's awesome.
she's an original coach before there were coaches. Yeah. So, I mean, and I've learned so very much from her wisdom, which is such a blessing. But, that's what we did out in California when we went in 2017 on that little road trip that we took, is go, okay, what does this look like? And I'll tell you what's amazing. That was 7 years ago. When we go back and we look at that document, because a lot of times you don't know how you're going to get there either,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You just are putting it out there. You realize, wow, we did that. We got there. We didn't know how back in 2017 we were gonna. I mean, I wrote down some nutty stuff like I'm gonna live in a house that's all white walls and big windows and clean and not cluttered. Imagine what my house looked like 7 years ago with 8 kids in the house, right? I mean, somebody came and offered for our farm in 2018, and we moved into that house, that we saw.
Wow.
Our farm wasn't even on the market. Yeah,
Wow.
I know. So, but it's those kind of things. So even your entrepreneurial journey for your business specifically, because your business is going to create the life that
Right.
you're looking for, right? So
Right.
that's why I say put those things about your life and
Mhm.
your business. I have X amount of clients. I am traveling internationally to take care of these. I'm lecturing. Whatever it is that
Mhm.
you want to create, put that out there first, and then do that reverse engineering. And then,
Love it.
like you said earlier, don't be afraid to reassess and pivot if you
Mhm.
do, but trust the process too.
Mhm. Mhm. I love it. I love it. Can you let everyone know how to find you, what your social media links are, website?
Sure. So our main business is medicaltransformationcenter.com, and we're on Instagram and Facebook. We just opened our TikTok account. I'll tell you about why in just a second. We just opened TikTok. We're on Pinterest, I think, and but we do a lot of we do a lot of it. We have a great social media team. I think that does a lot of puts a little good content out there. We also, I'm personally Terri.Paige, Terri.Paige, out on Instagram and Facebook and on LinkedIn. We actually have another company that I started, forgot to tell you that, in 2021. It's an offshoot. It started initially to service our patients, but we are growing that into a full-on lifestyle brand, and we've just put mechanisms in place. We've been doing it incrementally because we want to bootstrap it, Of course, right? We're going to bootstrap it. And so we keep reinvesting, but it's regenavita.com. Look for that to explode next year, because we do have our TikTok getting ready to be up and going, and it's all about lifestyle. We do have supplementation there. We're going to have other things that really promote an optimal lifestyle on there, grounding pads, different things like that, access to clean foods and things. So and a lot of good education that will help empower people to take control, to take responsibility of their health.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Wow. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for opening up about your journey to all of our listeners. It was amazing and insightful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Gosh, I haven't told the story like that in a long time. So it was a good walk down memory lane.
Listen, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Everyone, I will also link all of her social media handles on our YouTube page. If you're listening to it, head to our YouTube, where you can find all of the information for the wonderful Miss Terri Paige.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. One tool that I can truly recommend on how you can organize and execute systems is Notion. Notion allows you to seamlessly get information out of your head and into a centralized, organized space. Whether it's documenting processes, managing projects, or brainstorming ideas, Notion can be your go-to platform. As a special offer to our listeners, you can get started with Notion using the link in the episode description. By using our affiliate link, you not only support our podcast, but also gain access to free templates designed to kickstart your journey with Notion. These templates are specifically crafted to help entrepreneurs streamline their workflows and boost productivity. To take advantage of this offer, simply visit the affiliate link below to sign up and explore the free templates available in the resource section. Whether you're a solopreneur, managing a team, Notion can be the game changer you've been looking for. Stay tuned for more episodes where we dive deep into strategies, tools that can empower you as an entrepreneur. And don't forget to subscribe to Entrepreneurial Truth so you never miss an episode filled with actionable advice and insights. Thank you once again for joining us today. Until next time, keep innovating and scaling your business with purpose. Thanks again.